All praise and glory to God. His will be done, and we're grateful to be here. And as I said in my hearing, it was Jesus and Jenny. I would not be here without you, sweetheart. Thank you so much. I want to thank the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump. We could not have a better Commander-in-Chief than him. It is the honor of a lifetime, sir, to serve under you. We look forward to having the backs of our troops and having your back in executing peace through strength, in putting America first, and in rebuilding our military. Mr. Vice President, thank you for breaking the tie. It's not the last time, or not the first time the headline reads, Junior Enlisted Marine bails out Junior Army Officer. And you know, some people were saying, well, 50-50, that's too tight. And Senator Mark Wayne Mullen was nice enough to take my kids up to the gallery to watch the actual moment that the Vice President sealed the deal. And they came running in, they said, Dad, instead of being sad about 50-50, 51-50, they said, Dad, you won in overtime. That's the perspective I like. So thank you throughout this process, Mr. Vice President, for being incredible. I also want to thank the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. So many members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, we became fast friends in this process. The advice, the consent, the wisdom, the guidance. I look forward to working with all of you and other senators to ensure the Defense Department has what it needs, that our nation has what it needs, and that we're prepared to defend it in all moments. To my staff, amazing staff who were with us this entire process, I see so many of you through thick and thin. We used to look at the betting odds every once in a while on this. It was low at one point. Never do that. But we defied them. And there were so many folks on the inside and then allies on the outside who stood by us every single moment. And we are eternally grateful for that. And I want to thank the warfighters. I want to thank the men and women wearing the uniform. And I've said this before when I speak, and I mean it. Every time I stand at a podium and there's bright lights and cameras, the first thing that goes through my head are the guys that I served with on the battlefield. The men and the women who I lock shields with and put my life on the line with, who never get the spotlight, who never have the cameras, who people don't know what they did in dark and dangerous places. But I know. And at the Pentagon, we're going to remember and we're going to know. And we're going to think about those warriors with every single decision that we make. We will put America first. We will bring peace through strength. And the three principles I talked about are what we will bring to that Pentagon. Restore the warrior ethos in everything that we do. Rebuild our military and reestablish deterrence. We don't want to fight wars. We want to deter them, as you said. And we want to end them responsibly. But if we need to fight them, we're going to bring overwhelming and decisive force to close with and destroy the enemy and bring our boys home.
Okay, so whether he's going to do any of those things is an aspiration. We don't know. A lot of people have made a lot of bold statements at the beginning of their tenure, and then as time goes on and pressures become real, they don't do it. I don't know. We are going to continue to hold everybody's feet to the fire because we're unintimidated and uncompromised. No matter who's in office, no matter what's going on, we're going to bring you the truth as it happens. However, I will tell you that this, to me, is a breath of fresh air because he at least has a chance to do something besides just the status quo, besides just coming in from the defense industry and serving a period of time, building up your credentials, going back to the industry, making millions of dollars, all this kind of stuff. And that's just a routine thing, making decisions. One of the last things he said there, which at least as us sit here today, stand out the most. He said, every decision that we make is going to be based on the men and women serving in the uniform. And on America outcomes first, not whether it's going to get a damn contract passed for the defense industry, not whether it's going to make somebody else more cash somewhere. And look, I don't care what anybody has said. Actions indicate that a majority of the secretaries of defense have that way up at the top of the list of their decision makings. And other than lip service, I don't see very much concern about the troops. I'm sure they're there. I don't mean to imply that no one cares about our troops. I'm sure they all do. But the problem is they have not been at the top They have been in the mix. We need somebody, and the people who are in the U.S. Armed Forces, people who wear the uniform right now, and I can speak as one who did, and I can just tell you, if I were still in there, I would be really excited about the prospects that maybe this guy is going to be different. Now, whatever may have happened in the past, I can't speak to, especially in any of his social or personal conduct issues. I can't speak to that. But right now, he is the Secretary of Defense. And this is what we have to focus on, because that's who we have and what's going to be there going forward. So some of the specific things he said are departures from what's happened here. And I'm going to get into those in just a second, but I want to tell you there's a piece out in Responsible Statecraft today by Kelly Vlahos, who we've had on our show before as an excellent foreign policy analyst, military analyst. And she says, hey, okay, Hegseth is confirmed, but this is where we find out what his true mettle is. And many of the things she's talking about is some of the challenges he's going to face and what's going to be happening here. And I'll just tell you right off the top of the bat, she's absolutely right that there are a lot of challenges he's going to face. And one of them, and maybe the biggest one, is this institution. Now, you saw Tim Kaine there saying that we need another institution guy to come in, just like these other ones, Esper and Mattis, and you can fill in the blank, all the ones going back even before that. General Lloyd Austin, the outgoing him, another guy, classic with the credentials, but just did a horrific job with the Afghanistan withdrawal and an even worse job with the situation in the Russia-Ukraine war. Just horrific. He's going to be condemned in history by this. You will not be kind to that man, but he met all the criteria because he's standard data. Well, I got bad news for everybody. That's what exists in the bureaucracy of the Pentagon. All the services that are in there, all the senior people who've been in there for a long time, that's kind of their mentality. They like to replicate themselves. So the chances are pretty high that Hegseth is going to run smack dab into that because, we just got to be honest here. A lot of 4-star generals, 3-star generals are not going to be very keen to be taking orders from a guy who's a major. That's a mid-level rank. And they're not going to want to take some orders from a major who is a TV guy. That's how they'll view it. And so there is going to be a real chance that he gets undermined in many points here because, understand this, they want him to fail. There are many in the Pentagon, in and out of uniform, that want Hegseth to fail because they want to say, I told you he wasn't qualified, so now we got to bring in a guy from the swamp. Someone else who's equally qualified. That's what's going to happen. So even if Hegseth wants to do a lot of these specific things he mentioned there, he's going to have a hard row to hoe. It is not going to be easy for him. And he's going to need some really high quality people serving as his lieutenants and his sub-commanders and the various heads of organizations within the Defense Department. These folks are going to help determine whether he succeeds or not. But there's one other thing that if I could give one suggestion to the Secretary of Defense is that he go after the, quote, deadwood and try to cull out some of these people. Now, there was some commentary by President Trump, I think after he got elected and before all this, the Hegseth brought into, even before Hegseth was mentioned, I think, that he said, hey, actually, no, this goes back even before the election. He said that we want to get rid of a lot of general officers. Now, that got a lot of people going crazy and said, oh, you're politicizing the military. And if they don't meet this quota of whether or not they're politically motivated, you're going to get rid of them. That's not what Trump said, first of all. He just said he wants to get rid of people who aren't performing. What a shock that would be. Why would we want to hold someone accountable for what they did or didn't do? That's not how the system works. I've personally observed general officers who were horrific failures at what they did get this big medal pinned on their chest and promoted to another star. It was just disgusting to me when I saw that. And that was hardly isolated. But that's what the mentality is of the people in it that keep replicating themselves, because those guys who failed and were promoted up are extremely loyal to making sure that the next generation comes in and looks just like them. So what I think that President Trump should do, and even aside, not even the Secretary of Defense, what really President Trump should do is what FDR did prior to World War II. Then at the time in the late 1930s, you had the Secretary of the Army, George C. Marshall, was charged by the president to get rid of the, quote, deadwood. And what they ended up doing was saying, hey, there's just been a lot of institutional rot in the military, especially since World War I. And a lot of people just got comfortable and just kind of staying in power and just enjoying their position. And they weren't mentally changed from the First World War. They were not tracking with what's going on. So they ended up getting rid of 600 officers, which they call deadwood. And there was thousands, or a total of many, many senior leaders, especially colonels and generals. And during the war, they had really high standards that if you didn't prove yourself as a general officer and a commander within, I think it was 90 days, then they would fire you. And they did. They fired a lot of people. So they set this culture of excellence. You either perform or you're out. And that's exactly what we need. It doesn't need to be, some kind of political thing. I hope they would not do something like, okay, where are you on wokeness? Because that's what's going to determine. That doesn't even need to be in the picture. What needs to be in the picture, exclusively in the picture, and Hegseth has indicated that this is one of his criteria. Can you be a warfighter? Can you do these things? And he mentioned a handful of them there. He said he wants to bring the warfighter ethos in. There is no better way. And I can just tell you from somebody who served up to a lieutenant colonel, so that's just on the lower edge of the upper officer ranks. So I spent the majority of my time at the battalion level and below. And I can tell you for sure, all the way up here, we would die to have any leader that actually put the warfighter first, that actually had the mentality and the ethos, that didn't just hold other people accountable, but held himself accountable. That's what we wanted to see, and we would do anything for a leader like that. That's one of the reasons why I think that Hegseth has a chance to be the most effective Secretary of Defense that we've had in generations, because he said in the last of that clip, he's focused on the people. And if he's focused on the people and he's focused on bringing a warrior ethos into this, that says you have a high standard, you have to meet that standard, or you're going to be gone. Now, that seems kind of harsh to some people, but that's what we need, folks. War is harsh. Combat is harsh. It's unforgiving. If you put people up there who don't belong, if you elevate people who don't belong, and then they get into a serious clash, men are going to die because of it. That did happen. Even with the culling, even with what George Marshall did prior to World War II, there were still some that got through. And when they got into the crucible of combat, they wilted, and men died because of it. Missions failed, and that always translates into men dying. So it needs to be a very high standard, ruthlessly adhered to. And I want to hear that. And I also love that he said in there that his idea is we want to reform the military, rebuild it, and then we want to avoid wars we don't need to fight, get out of wars, Ukraine, get out of wars that we don't need to be supporting. And then he said that we want to not fight any wars we don't need to, because we want to reestablish deterrence, was the way he put it there. And then one of the last things he said was, and this is something that, again, I would have died to have somebody like this in command and in leader while I was serving in uniform. We will win decisively if we have to fight. If we can't avoid war with diplomacy, if we can't use it through deterrence, and if war is forced on us, then we need to win decisively. And I'm all for that. That was my mentality, and some of the military leaders like Doug McGregor, who was my mentor and boss at various times during my career. It's like, if we fight, we will win decisively, and we will fight good, because we're going to be reformed. We're going to have the kinds of organization that you need. We're going to have the new mentality, the new tools of war, everything we need to actually fight and win decisively. We should not do that unless it is absolutely foisted upon us. Let me reiterate that one more time. This is not a code to, let's have a big, strong military so we can go conquering people. I'm out on that, way out on that. That is an abuse and a misuse of our armed forces. It is harmful to our country. But it sounds like they don't want to do that, because they said they want to avoid any wars they don't need. But we do need, the reason why I have a Department of Defense is, if we're attacked by anybody, we need to have that kind of military. So I hope that's what he does. I hope he does what he actually says he's going to do. And I would advocate President Trump using one of these deadwood kind of mentalities and charge somebody and give them the authority to go and do that. There are ways to do it right. There are ways to do it effectively that end up with a much stronger military that has trusted, that goes all the way from the top to the bottom and from the bottom up. Loyalty works both ways. And if you get a good leader at the top who understands that, the whole military can be improved from where it is right now. And I really Hope we see that. Thank you very much for watching today on a Saturday. We always appreciate you. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't on your way out. And we're going to have some great shows coming this week. You're not going to want to miss. Truly, we got some really good guests coming up. I'm really excited about some of them, especially toward the end of the week. But we'll tell you about those coming up next week. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.